Today, we're going to be talking about a big, hot subject. Is foreclosures going to cause a market crash? And we're going to dig deep into this so you have all the relevant data you need to make the right decision.
Yeah, so let's get to it.
All right, so Lona, let's talk about the first things I want to talk about is the National Association of Realtors puts out an existing home sales report every so often. This one just came out last week. And what this is it's a report on all the existing home sales, how we're doing as a market nationally, right? So we're going to talk about that first so you know what's happening in the market there nationally, and then we're going to break it down a little bit further and give you some numbers locally so that you know what's happening here locally. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So interesting things on the report that I think that we need to talk about was, the first thing was how are we trending? How many existing home sales are there going to be for the year? This is a seasonally adjusted average, which means that in the summertime, there's generally more sales than in the wintertime nationally. Not here so much in Florida. That's when everybody else wants to be here, right?
Yeah, we're exactly the opposite of that.
Right. But what I'm saying is in June, like if we stayed on pace for the amount of sales that happen in June, how many total sales will there be for the end of the year? They adjust that every single month. And if we stay on the current trend for the amount of sales that happen in June, we'll end up at 5.1 million sales nationally. Still a very strong number when you compare it to the previous years. And then the next thing that that I think we need to talk about is 44%. This is something I found really interesting. 44% of all existing home sales were in the South.
Oh, that's not too hard to believe, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about why you think that is. Why do you think 44% of all the 5.1 million sales will be in the South?
Well, I think that our great weather, right? And the fact that Florida is a no income tax state is a huge draw to our area and to the state of Florida in particular.
Sure.
And Florida's the land of the free. I think a lot of people that were shut down a lot during the pandemic and stuff found Florida to be more and more attractive because, as business owners, we weren't shut down for very long. We could keep living our lives for the most part and doing business. And that's huge how that impacts people's lives.
Yeah. And I was on the phone with one of my team members who's just south of Chicago. And we were talking about this yesterday, like, what content do we need to create for our viewers? And our content is for people flooding into our state, and his content, the videos that he's recording, are for people wanting to leave the state. And that's the unfortunate part, but it nails exactly what you said, is that a lot of the Democratic states and cities, unfortunately, have people flooding out of their areas and moving south to the land of the free.
Right? Exactly.
So I think that obviously is a big portion of it. And that's why we're 44% of the existing home sales. And then if you break down the percentage of the total sales by price point, here's something that everybody needs to know, is that the biggest drop in sales happens anywhere from that $0 to $500,000 price point. So from 0 to 100,000, there was a 26.5% drop from June of this year versus June of last year. From the 100,000 to 250,000, it was 31.1% drop, right? Because I think that's where most buyers are. You can't buy much for under 100K, right? So
right.
Still a big drop there, but the biggest drop is where you're actually buying the homes. People with mortgages are actually buying homes, which is at 100 to 250K. And then you have the 250K to 500K, which is 10.8% drop. And then something interesting happens once you get above 500K. There was an actual increase in the total number of sales once you got above 500K. So 500 to 750K, they had a 5.2% increase. From the 750K to 1 million, they had a 6.3% increase, and then a 2% increase in the 1 million plus homes.
Yeah, that makes sense because a lot of mortgage borrowers borrowers are under the 500K mark, and interest rates just went up, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people got scared and decided to put a freeze on their home search.
Yeah, they're pumping the brakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting scared. And Lona and I have been doing this for 20 years, or coming right up on that 20 years. And we've been through this or similar situations before where the market has slowed down. And it seems like right when things like interest rates go up, that's when people start pumping the brakes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's usually like this window of time, and I don't want to put an exact window of time, but it feels like it's like 6 months. There's a six month window that buyers just freak out. And then after right around that 6 month mark or so, give or take, people are like, okay, this is our reality. I'm not staying in my current situation. I don't give a shit what interest rates are. I'm going to make a move, right?
Right.
I got to make a move.
Well, life happens. So if you have a situation where you really have a need to move, you're not going to stay put for too long. You're going to realize either rates are going to keep going up. So get in at 5.5% or 6%, which is still a great rate, right? I can't stress that enough. We bought our first home together at 6%.
Yep.
And we were really happy about that at the time.
Yep. The next thing that I want to talk about is the average days on market. So the average days on market nationally was 14 days still.
Mm-hmm.
That's super fast.
That is really fast.
That's super fast. Like, normally in the normal market, it's like 50, whatever, 60 days on market, maybe even more than that. It's been so long since we had a normal market, I almost forget what the normal market was like.
Right. I mean, that is still a shift from houses flying off the shelf within the first day and having 30 offers on them, right? So 14 days seems a lot longer, but 14 days is an amazing time period to get a home sold. That's still great.
And so you know what it is locally? Our average days on market is 8 days.
Right. Southwest Florida. 8
days. Still that's the average days. And I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, well, I'm seeing houses sit longer. That's true, you are. And what's happening is we're in the last 7 days, we had 600 to 800 price reductions, right? Mm-hmm. So we're having tons of price reductions because people have to adjust their price because the market is slowing down and they're chasing the market now. They're not, they were trying to get those astronomical numbers.
Right. I think a lot of those properties were overpriced to begin with, because everybody knows that sellers were just putting it out there. Like, if I can get X, I'm going to go for it, because that's been pretty commonplace in our market for the last couple years to get, in some situations, even hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking price with all the competing buyers.
Exactly. And then the average home sales price nationally was $416,000. And ours here in Southwest Florida is $459,000. So still a solid average price point, and just some interesting stuff that I wanted to share before we even jump into this next piece. So first, I want to let everybody know that again, our job is to keep you informed, and so we're going to keep doing these reports for you, like on a weekly basis. We're going to try to do it on a weekly basis at least, so you will stay up to date on the changes, because it changes from day to day, it feels like. So the first thing is I want to explain to everyone is there's 3 ways a home can come on the market. You have existing homes that are already built, and of all different ages. And then you have new construction, which is your builders building homes. That's another way that homes come on the market. And then there's a third way, and that's distressed properties. So foreclosures, right? So that can change the market too. So there's only 3 ways the market can change, but it's one of those avenues have to be affected, or all 3 of those have to be affected. So the first thing I want to talk about is that there are not enough homes for sale. And this is a report from the National Association of Realtors they put out that shows all the homes currently on the market plus the pending homes, which.
So what do you mean by pending?
Homes under contract. There's already a buyer on there and a seller have already come to an agreement, and they're working through some hurdles to get to that closing table.
Right. So most likely those homes are going to sell, right?
Yep.
Because they're pending.
Yep. And so we haven't seen enough evidence that there's going to be a flood of inventory that hits the market But if you look at this slide, there's 3 months of inventory, including the pendings.
Right.
But if you take out the pendings, there's 2.7 months. So we're under 3 months. Now, to a lot of people watching, what does that mean? Like, what's three months mean? Well, a balanced market's 6 months of inventory, right? And we had 6 months years ago, and we've been low ever since. And now we're trending up a little bit, and we're still at 3 months. We're still not at a seller's market. We'll talk more about that in a little while. But
we still are in a seller's market.
Right, we're still in a seller's market, exactly. So let's talk to drill down into that further. Let's talk about the new construction piece of this.
Okay.
And look at this slide here. This basically shows building permits. We'll start with the building permits. The seasonally adjusted annual rate for building permits is 1.6 million. So that's how many permits are going through the process. Housing starts. So this is builders actually starting in June. We're right around that 1.559 million mark. The homes that are actually under construction are 1.5 million. And the housing units completed, all the new construction that's completed on the market, is around 1.3 million. Okay, now what's this mean? The thing that jumped out at me here is the housing starts. You can see from April till June that there's been a big decrease in housing starts. Why do you think that is?
From April until June?
Yep.
Because rates went up. Everything's kind of pointing back to rates right now. And so I think that possibly some people could have been building a little on the higher end, and then rates went up, and that affected their payment. So, and just seeing a little bit of a change, a little bit of a shift in the market, people tend to get a little nervous, right? So they may have, what they felt very confident about just a few months ago could have made them a little nervous.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that. And also you got to look at it as a lot of builders have to get loans to build properties. Now their interest rate is affected. Now their margins are getting squeezed more. And then their main market, going back to the breakdown, the price breakdown for the big decrease in the total sales was in the people getting the mortgages, right? And that's where most of the builders are building.
Right.
You got a lot less builders when you're talking about building luxury properties.
Sure. Let's go back and look at what you mentioned earlier. The national average sales price is $416,000. So it falls right within that range.
Exactly. So the point of this is we talk about the 3 ways that homes can come on market: existing home sales, residential construction, and distressed properties like foreclosures. So we know that new construction is backing off, and we're not seeing a lot of those, and they're starting to pump the brakes. So there's no inventory coming there. So that's something to take into consideration.
So it looks like, looking at that, it looks like there's about 1 million homes being built, which is still not enough inventory to meet the current demand in the marketplace.
Well, great point. So we shared on our last video that we are still anywhere between 3 million, and I heard a number as high as 6 million homes underbuilt for what we need to have a balanced market.
Right.
That's a lot of homes.
That is a lot of homes. So if we take all these factors and add them together, even with homes coming on the market, it's still not enough.
Yep, exactly. This next slide, which is your foreclosure activity. So let's just sit here and talk about this for a minute. If you look during the years 2008, 9, and 10, you can see during those loose standards, that's when majority of the foreclosures happened, right? So we had just a ton of activity and ton of foreclosures. But what's happened since 2010 when the standards, did they call that the Dodd-Frank Act or whatever got passed, and that's what caused the lending standards to be real tight. Do you remember how tight they were right after the foreclosure wave? They got super tight there, and then they had to loosen them up a little bit so some people could get loans. But you can see right after that, right after the bubble there, we've been decreasing ever since.
Since about 2011, yeah, just because we've had better qualified buyers. lending restrictions tighten, it's harder to get a loan. They're not just giving loans away. They're not doing 90-10 mortgages like they were, pre-housing bubble.
Yeah.
And naturally, the number of foreclosures starts to trend down.
Mm-hmm. And so if you stick around to the end here, I'm curious myself as how many foreclosures are on the market as of right now here in Southwest Florida in our market. And I'm going to pull it up and we're going to look at how many foreclosures there are so you know exactly how many is on the market.
Now, I will say in 2021, we did have some anomalies, right, in the market, like people that went through a hard time because of the pandemic, lost their businesses and things like that. There was a huge moratorium on foreclosures, so everything was put to a halt as far as the foreclosure process. And as we're coming out of that, we do expect to see more foreclosures enter the marketplace.
Yes, there will be some that come out as soon as that moratorium's up. I agree. And so this next slide shows the foreclosure activity for the first part of the year. And you can see that we had that little jump up in foreclosure activity nationally because, like you just said, it goes along with the moratorium. The moratorium ended, and now you have some foreclosures coming through. But look at, if you look at 2022 there, it's still less than 2020.
Right.
And this is the forecast for the year, right? So we're still doing pretty good in terms of foreclosures. So we don't see a lot of those going to hit the market either. We don't think foreclosures are going to change the market, at least nationally, if these numbers, hold up, and that's what we end up seeing.
Well, certainly not enough to cause the big crash that buyers may be hoping for.
Exactly. Which leads us to this next quote here that was by an economist named Rick Sharga, who's the executive VP of market intelligence at Adam. He says that foreclosure activity across the United States continued its slow, steady climb back to pre-pandemic levels in the first half of 2022. While overall foreclosure activity is still running significantly below historic averages, the dramatic increase in foreclosure starts suggests that we may be back to normal levels by sometime in early 2023. So we're not going to see probably a big wave this year. And if we do see any, it'll probably be early 2023, according to Rick Sharga. Okay. And then this goes back to what we were just talking about a little bit ago. How many homes are on the market right now? If we stop putting new homes on the market, how long would it take to sell all the homes that are currently listed for sale? And we're sitting at 2.7 months of inventory. And here in Florida, we're right around that 2.4 months of inventory, a little bit less than that. And so we still don't have enough. Here's the bottom line, folks. We don't have enough inventory to still meet the demand, even though it is slowing down. We are seeing prices go down on the overpriced homes, and we are seeing less buyers in the market because the mortgage people have backed out or are slowing down. They're pumping the brakes. They'll be back. But ultimately, this is a good thing. We need to work back toward a neutral market, which is around that 6-month frame, right?
Yep.
So now, how many homes are on the market that are foreclosures? Well, this is everything that's in our MLS here locally that is under the foreclosure status. There are 15 foreclosures ranging from 150,000 up to 1.7. Now, one thing that I noticed is the days on market for all those properties seem a little bit high to me. So hopefully you found this video helpful and useful, and you can use it to make the right decision when it comes to buying or selling. If you need any advice when it comes to buying or selling, you can always reach out to me and Lona, and we will be glad to help you figure it all out. That's what we do, right?
Sure.
And I'll also put a link to our website in the bottom that you can go on there and search all the existing homes for sale, including foreclosures. If you want to do that yourself and see what how many foreclosures are on market, just click on that link.
Or distress sales in general.
Or distress sales in general. That's correct. And then if you want to see what your home is worth, click on that other link down there. And we use a proprietary system that is pretty accurate, scarily accurate. I think I'm going to be out of the job pretty soon. But it will tell you an average price of what your home is worth based on the home sales that are around you. Now, you will probably need us to come in there and get a little bit more granular and a little more accurate with it. And plus we'll come through and tell you the things to do or not to do on your home. So as always, I'm Doug Lugers.
I'm Lona Lugers.
Thanks for watching.